because I haven't talked about this bastard enough. But hey, at least in the context of comparing it directly to its successor, Super Mario Odyssey, I kind of want to talk about which game is better, at least kind of going head to head with the categories I chose, and in my opinion, Super Mario 3D World versus Super Mario Odyssey. Now in reality, while these are both 3D Mario games, they are quite a bit different. They are two different types of 3D Mario games. Nintendo made the distinction between these two types of games pretty clear during Odyssey's announcement, where they showed this diagram showing that 3D World was a part of the course clear 3D Mario games, where it's mostly just like a linear adventure. You get from point A to point B. While Super Mario Odyssey was more in line with something like Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine in terms of being a sandbox exploratory 3D Mario. And I think this game's announcement was a key factor in the Switch just having a huge boost of success right from the get-go. There was so much excitement surrounding that console's launch year, and Super Mario Odyssey was kind of the climax of the excitement of that year in October of 2017. And that was because it had been a good long while since we'd had a 3D Mario, or just a Mario game in general, that felt this big. And that's not to dock 3D World, but 3D World, ever since its announcement at E3 2013, it just kind of felt a little, I don't know, damp. Like, the Wii U was already struggling to really gain a ton of excitement. Sure, you had New Super Mario Bros. U at the launch of that system, but for God's sake, that's New Super Mario Bros. U. If this game is damp, that game is a goddamn ocean. In January 2013, during that big Wii U Direct where Satoru Iwata was kind of going like, okay guys, please don't worry, we have stuff in the works for Wii U. He announced like, hey, there's gonna be a 3D Mario action game announced at E3 2013. And that was enough to really feel like, all right, the Wii U is kicking into gear. This is gonna be all dandy. I mean, they showed off Super Mario Galaxy, Galaxy 2, and 3D Land as the examples of like, this is what this team who developed these games is working on. And just seeing Galaxy and Galaxy 2 was enough to be like, oh my God, this is gonna be something along the same level as one of those masterpieces. And then there was 3D Land. 3D Land was a phenomenal game, but it almost felt like it was like, oh yeah, that was just the last 3D Mario game, and it was on a handheld, so they included it there. But in reality, that was actually going to be the basis for the next home console game, which they revealed at E3 2013. And right when that trailer started up, it felt really deflating. Nothing looked bad here, but it was just very confusing because this was obviously taking cues from 3D Land. And I think 3D Land, again, was a phenomenal game. I loved 3D Land, but it almost felt like 3D Land was designed the way it was because of the 3DS's 3D display. They had very specific fixed camera angles in that game to kind of help prove the validity of stereoscopic 3D gaming. It made it so then like, oh man, you can make your jumps so much easier by turning that 3D on. My point is, 3D Land felt so designed for the 3DS that when we saw 3D World, like, it just kind of caught me off guard. And as good as 3D Land was, it was a handheld 3D Mario game, so things were a bit smaller scale than something like a Super Mario Galaxy, which is the type of game I was expecting to see on Wii U in terms of scope, like, oh man, we're going big like that, we're going on a huge adventure. 3D World was a very traditional Mario game. And on top of all the problems I already said here, Mario was already kind of experiencing a bit of oversaturation at the time. I mean, in 2006, we had New Super Mario Bros. On the DS. 2007, Mario Galaxy. 2008, we had some time off, but 2009, we came back with New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Then 2010, only a couple months later, we got Super Mario Galaxy 2. And then a year after that, in 2011, we got Super Mario 3D Land. And then in 2012, we got two new Super Mario Bros. Games, one right after another. And even then, in 2013, New Super Mario Bros. U got standalone DLC with New Super Luigi U, so we practically got a brand new Super Mario Bros. Game. And it didn't help that Super Mario 3D World, because it was so based on 3D Land, which in of itself was kind of like, oh, let's take a 2D Mario game where you go from start to end and you jump on the flagpole and all of that stuff and everything looks a little more generic, but let's just put that in 3D. So 3D World already kind of felt like another New Super Mario Bros. Game, especially considering the fact that they were really pushing 4-player cooperative multiplayer, just like New Super Mario Bros. Wii and New Super Mario Bros. U. God damn! Yeah, this game just wasn't really the brand new exciting 3D Mario that showcased what exactly made this new Nintendo console so special that we needed at the time. Again, it didn't look bad, but it was just kind of like a wet blanket of an announcement. That is, until October of 2013, when Nintendo put out a brand new trailer for the game, which just turned everything on its head. Like, it was still 3D World, but I think it showcased enough brand new ideas, cool new power-ups, cool level design quirks, all cut together with great music. This felt like a game with a ton more personality than the E3 2013 trailer ever made it look like. That trailer just got me so excited. You know, like, I didn't think this was going to be like, oh my god, like this incredible Mario Galaxy-esque experience, but it looked like a damn fun Mario game. And upon its release in November 2013, that's exactly what it was. Now, it got incredible review scores, like a couple of 10 out of 10s, all of that kind of stuff. I got this game pre-ordered on Amazon. I got it that very day. Of course, I was like, what, like 16 at the time, so this was all still a little newer for me. You know, I started having my own disposable income because of my part-time job at the time. You know, as much as I loved Galaxy to death, and I loved 3D Land to death, I didn't really play Galaxy 2 that much until a few years after 3D World. But either way, like, this was kind of the first Mario game I was there for at the very launch. Well, actually, I think I picked up New Super Mario Bros. 2 at launch, but it's also like, it's New Super Mario Bros. 2. And yeah, I remember jamming on this game for months. You know, I 100%ed it with Mario. I didn't want to go through with all of the extra characters and whatnot. Like, I just got to Champions Road, and you know, I thought like, all right, I'm happy with that. And yeah, I absolutely adored the game. However, if you've watched the Scott the Woz episodes I've done on this game, which at this point I've made like 40, and I've seen some people like question, it's just like, what do these titles mean? A critical second look? Where's the first look? Yeah, well, the first look was when I just played the game initially. The first episode about it was kind of like me doing a critical second look at the game, because in 2017, that was kind of when my opinions were a little soured about this game. Like, I loved it at first, but over time, like, I kind of just felt like this wasn't the game the Wii U needed. And I was kind of feeling that all these great feelings about this game when it first came out in 2013, it almost feels like that was just because, like, oh, we all wanted this game to do super well. We wanted the Wii U to succeed. Because keep in mind, in 2011, when the 3DS was struggling big time, after it got a price drop, Mario 3D Land came out and it got rave reviews. And that, right alongside Mario Kart 7 launching in December of 2011, really helped kick the 3DS back into gear and helped kind of solidify that handheld being a decent success. And hey, listen, I think we all like a Cinderella story. In 2013, the Wii U just got a price drop, and then shortly after November 2013, we got a brand new 3D Mario game. And then later on in like 2014, we were about to get Mario Kart 8. So, you know, things were adding up. It was going to be kind of like the 3DS all over again, except the difference is this is the Wii U. So yeah, when I thought this game was absolutely incredible when I first tried it out, you know, I think over the next couple of years, I was questioning that a lot. And in 2017, when I made that episode, I was very critical of that game. You know, I still said it was a great game, but probably like a 7 out of 10 or so. And a lot of that was because I didn't think this was the 3D Mario the Wii U needed. I think the Wii U needed a game like Super Mario Odyssey, and then after this released, I thought like a game like 3D World would have made a lot of sense as a secondary extra 3D Mario to put out on the console. But thankfully, Super Mario Odyssey was the Nintendo Switch's first and main 3D Mario game, and it launched within the first year of that system's existence. Hell, it was teased in the initial announcement trailer, and they fully showcased the game at the Nintendo Switch presentation 2017. And yeah, I remember people watching the Nintendo Switch reveal trailer in 2016 and seeing like this 3D Mario game getting played. And I remember a lot of people saying, wait, this looks like a 3D World type game. And I was just very confused by that. Like, in no way did this look like a 3D World type game. The only thing that I think you can make the argument for is the fact that there were like the gold coin rings kind of in the distance. But like, what about that? Like, look at the camera angle. Look at the world he's in. And upon the actual reveal of the game, it was shown that this is a sandbox 3D Mario, which was something everybody was begging for. You know, it's been so long since a game like Super Mario Sunshine, which is the last game that was considered that. To be honest, back then, I always considered Galaxy to be a little more sandboxy, but that was kind of before I really analyzed game design as much. I mean, I'm still not a game designer by any means, and I don't know how to legitimately analyze game design as much as a lot of other people out there, but at least I can now very much tell that Galaxy 1 is an incredibly linear game, and a lot of its more open levels are kind of just like, they feel open, but they aren't really. I think it always mostly came down to, like, as a kid, I thought the Honey Hive Galaxy in Galaxy 1 just felt like, oh, wow, this is like an open sandbox area. This is like Bob-on Battlefield from Mario 64. When in reality, you look at that level and it's just like, yeah, it's just like, there's like a couple different areas in the level, but it isn't much. So going back to a big, bombastic, 3D, pseudo open world Mario game, that was exciting. And Odyssey looked great. The initial reveal showing off Mario in the realistic city was kind of like off-putting a bit. It definitely left an impression for sure, but it was also just so bizarre to see that happening. And I think it was the quickest way to show, like, hey, this isn't like another new Super Mario Brothers type experience. This isn't like a 3D world type game. This is an open 3D Mario game. And they didn't even focus on the whole capture mechanic. That was like the big gimmick of Odyssey. They showcased that at E3 2017. They waited. They only really showed off like the hat throwing mechanic in the reveal trailer and how like, oh, you can bounce off of it. And I remember that got a pop out of me. Like, I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. In reality, they were hiding this crazy new mechanic where you could capture enemies and just random things throughout the world. That trailer made this game seem like this infinite giant experience. Like, wow, you can capture anything and everything. Of course, in practice, like, you know, the capture mechanic is functionally kind of the replacement for like power-ups in the game. But again, much like the reveal trailer, made for a great first impression. And yeah, after a pretty exciting first year of the Nintendo Switch, it all kind of built up to Mario Odyssey in October of 2017, and this game was an incredible success. Definitely got even more 10 out of 10s than 3D World did, and it went on to sell like tens of millions of copies. This game was so beloved when it released, but I kind of feel like Odyssey experienced a lot of the same stuff 3D World did, because you see a couple of people, you know, say that it's just like, oh, I actually don't really like Odyssey, and you know, that's completely fair. It definitely has a structure that doesn't gel completely with everybody, you know, much like 3D World, but I think honestly, Odyssey's release kind of made 3D World a whole lot easier to appreciate, especially when they ported it to the Nintendo Switch in 2021. 3D World plus Bowser's Fury might be one of my favorite like deluxe editions or enhanced ports of any game Nintendo's done, just because they actually went in and they really refined 3D World. They didn't really add any major content to the game, but they tightened up everything with it. I mean, hell, the loading times in this game are 10 times better. After you'd complete a level in the original 3D World, there would be like this little 8-bit Mario saving loading screen that appears. But in the Nintendo Switch version, that's all in the background. That loading screen is now like in the bottom hand corner, and you don't even ever see it. All the stamps that were in the Wii U game were originally black and white, so you could post them on Miiverse. Well, now since Miiverse is no more, they actually went in, they colorized all the stamps, and they added a brand new photo mode where you can just plop the stamps wherever you want. But I think most notably, they increased the character's speed in this game. It goes a hell of a lot faster. You also have a brand new move. You have the dive move from Mario Odyssey, which is just so good to pull off. Like, this game, like, honestly feels like it always needed that move. It feels so good to just have that as like an extra little mechanic that you can pull off. And then on top of that, you have Bowser's Fury, which is just kind of like combining 3D World and Mario Odyssey. It's incredible. But I don't really want to compare these two packages necessarily, because I just want to compare baseline 3D World. And just make note of the fact that 3D World plus Bowser's Fury being on the same console as this, I think makes it so much easier to appreciate both of these games for what they do. Because as 3D World was on the Wii U, it could definitely be a little tricky sometimes to just appreciate this game for what it is. I never viewed this game as anything less than a really fun Mario game, but at times I never viewed it as anything more than that. And it is more than that. I think this is one of the most expertly crafted platformers out there. But you can kind of say the same about Mario Odyssey. So why don't we pit these two games together and see which one comes out on top? Now, of course, with these little versus kind of things, I'm just doing this off the cuff and just for funsies. Just because one game might win, like, who knows? I might think something else the next day. But this is just how I'm feeling right now. And I'm just gonna kind of go through all the motions with all of you right now in terms of like, oh, which one has better graphics? Which one has better gameplay? Just kind of talking out loud and figuring this out on the fly. So I devised 3 different categories to pit these two games against each other in. Presentation, which includes graphics, sound, and just kind of like the overall aesthetics of each game. Then we have gameplay, which is a bit of a broad topic, but it's kind of just down to the general gameplay design, the level design, the controls, the replay value, all of that stuff. And then third, we have legacy, which one left a bigger impact on the Mario franchise, video games as a whole, all that nonsense. So let's start off with presentation. Graphically, both of these games look fantastic, though they definitely go for different types of art styles and vibes. Mario 3D World is an incredibly clean looking game. Like, this is a game where everything looks smooth as butter. I recall one of the nicest looking things in the game was actually the water effects during the castle levels. Like, it just looked absolutely phenomenal, and oftentimes 3D World can just look very nice, but for the most part, I wouldn't say 3D World ever is like this stunning game. That water example is like one of the only major things I can think of that's like, wow, this looks great. Other than that, I mean, the game does look great, but it's not necessarily like jaw-dropping. It's just like a very clean game. And while its clean look is nice, it isn't the most appealing at times because everything has like this plasticky kind of shine to it all. And it just overall makes Mario 3D World feel very artificial. Like, it doesn't really feel like this is an actual world. It feels like these are a bunch of diorama sets. And yeah, that's kind of what 3D World is going for. It just kind of feels like a bunch of video game levels. It doesn't really feel like how the game like portrays it on the back of the box. Explore a whole new world. Like, the game takes place in the Sprixie Kingdom, which it doesn't really feel any different from the Mushroom Kingdom. These just feel like Mario levels. At least in something like Super Mario Sunshine when we go to Isle Delfino. Like, yeah, that feels like we're going somewhere else. It's still Mushroom Kingdom adjacent, but it does feel like, oh yeah, this is in a different part of the world. Galaxy and Galaxy 2 feel like we're going to space. Now, Galaxy 2 definitely kind of drops the space aesthetic a bit going into it. But my point is, 3D World doesn't really feel like we're doing anything new with the aesthetic. And the aesthetic that it already does have is not my favorite in the world. It just feels a bit unappealing. It's not bad, it doesn't look ugly or anything, but I do find myself preferring kind of the overall feel of Super Mario Odyssey's general aesthetic. However, there are a few things I don't really care about concerning Odyssey's aesthetic too. So Odyssey definitely goes for a much more realistic kind of style. They actually touch up Mario's design in a couple of interesting ways. How they give his hair a hair-like texture, and his overalls and shirt and gloves kind of have a texture of their own too. It's not as blatant as something like Super Smash Bros. Brawl's denim texture on Mario's overalls. But overall, I think it looks nice. I do feel like Odyssey does look a little rougher around the edges than 3D World, but that's just because 3D World goes for a simpler style. So I think it was easier for them to have like this completely clean cut look to literally like everything. Odyssey being a much larger in scope kind of experience with much larger worlds and way more NPCs you talk to and way more things going on. Like, yeah, looking at Odyssey, the texture work always kind of feels a little more easy to kind of point out some stuff that's like, oh, that looks a little rough. Something like, let's say, the grass texture in like the Mushroom Kingdom area of the game. Like, it doesn't look bad or anything, but compared to 3D World, which goes for a different aesthetic, which almost looks like damn AstroTurf with its grass, like, that just looks cleaner. This looks a little rougher, but, you know, like, there's just more detail with it. But when the game is as big as Odyssey, it's a lot easier to just blow right past a lot of stuff that may look a little crappier. Like, as an example, something like in New Donk City, if you're playing on Nintendo Switch 1, a lot of the NPCs in the background are moving at kind of a choppier frame rate. which doesn't really affect gameplay at all, but that's something that you just don't really see as much with 3D World. However, I will talk about this till the day I die. The sprawling savanna level in 3D World. That damn section where you go in the pipe and then it bursts you out and then you just see a shit ton of popping with like all the trees in that one open area. What the hell is up with that? They didn't even fix that with the Nintendo Switch port of the game. But I think the other thing that bugs me about Mario Odyssey is how it just doesn't really have a consistent art direction. Now, of course, a thing with Odyssey is that the consistency is in the inconsistency of things. It's Mario Odyssey. It's supposed to be kind of weird. There's all these different worlds you're exploring, and the different art styles are kind of meant to portray how it feels to go into a completely different country or a different area of the world where things just look and operate different. The problem is Odyssey just doesn't really go all the way with this. For the most part, everything kind of feels like slightly more realistic feeling Mario worlds. Something like the Snow Kingdom, the Seaside Kingdom, the Sand Kingdom, the Lake Kingdom, the Cascade Kingdom, the Wooded Kingdom. All of these just kind of feel like typical Mario areas, maybe a little more realistic than what we're used to, but you know, nothing out of the ordinary, especially based on like how Mario and company looks in the game. You know, they're all a little more detailed, so of course the worlds are going to be maybe a little more detailed themselves. But then you only have a handful of worlds that go for a drastically different art style, and I think that's a cool idea. Like, oh, all the different worlds have different art styles, but not all the worlds have different art styles. Like, I think that would have made the game feel a lot more cohesive, weirdly enough, if the worlds weren't as cohesive, if the worlds like all went for completely different art styles. Because as it is, you have New Donk City, which is the best level in the game, but you know, you just have a bunch of shitty looking realistic human beings in there, and that's kind of funny, but it's also like, it just feels weird considering the fact that pretty much most other like areas in the game, all the other NPCs in the game look like regular Mario characters. And then the Luncheon Kingdom right here goes for like this really weird like low poly art style, and I just don't think it looks very good. I don't think that kingdom is necessarily very fun to explore for me, and it's just strange considering like, okay, it's low poly. Why? I don't think it looks all too interesting. And even then, all the NPCs in this area don't even look different. It's like all these forks that look like Mario characters. The boss in that area, being that big old bird, looks like a regular Mario boss. Then you have certain things like the Cap Kingdom is like all kind of black and white, but other than that, it looks like a regular ass Mario world. The Ruined Kingdom, you know, like, oh man, the whole Dark Souls dragon boss fight, whoa! Like, yeah, that's something, but that's only just one boss fight. So I would say like, that's honestly like probably the most disappointing thing about Odyssey to me, is the fact that they definitely had something there. I think it would have been really cool if all of the kingdoms, or at least more of the kingdoms, had like a distinct art style, something that was as distinct as like, even though I don't really like the Luncheon Kingdom, like it's just like, just go for something like that. Like if the Wooded Kingdom had an aesthetic that was as distinct as that, I think things would have kind of like felt a little more like, okay, things are all coming together here. As it stands, it's really hard because I like how consistent 3D World feels, but I do like the highs of Odyssey more. So I think Odyssey's graphical style has higher highs and lower lows, and I think 3D World is just more consistent. And honestly, I have the same opinion about the music. Now, 3D World is a very big band-centric soundtrack, and I love it. I think that fits Mario so well. I think they really kind of came into their own thing. I think they really kind of figured out that like Mario works really well with kind of like an old-timey kind of big band orchestra. Odyssey has a much more varied soundtrack, and some tracks I think are even better than 3D World's best songs. I mean, even just like the Jump Up Superstar song in Odyssey is one of the most memorable Nintendo songs out there. And I know a lot of people really like the Wooded Kingdoms theme. You know, I'm gonna be honest, I think that theme it doesn't really fit the world, in my opinion. Like it doesn't really feel like it fits the world. I think it's a great track, but I almost feel like it would fit better like somewhere else sometime. But you know, I don't know. I still really like the track. But you have the incredible music playing when you land in the Cascade Kingdom for the first time. New Donk City's background music is just fantastic. You know, it feels feels a lot like 3D World music because, you know, it kind of goes for this very big bandy, kind of jazzy kind of sound. The end song, Breakthrough, Lead the Way, is great too. Like, there's a bunch of really great stuff in Odyssey. But I will definitely say, I think 3D World's soundtrack is one that I keep coming back to. It's just like, you can't go wrong with so many of the songs in 3D World. Double Cherry Pass has like one of the best Mario songs ever, and I love the Snowball Park theme in 3D World. It's actually just a remix of the snow theme in 3D Land, but they use like actual instrumentation in 3D World, and it is the most Christmassy sounding song like I've ever heard from a Nintendo game. It is incredible. So this one is really, really tricky. I would honestly say, in my opinion, I like 3D World's soundtrack more than Odyssey's. Again, I think Odyssey has higher highs, but lower lows. You know, it has a couple of tracks where I'm just like, you know, like it's not the most memorable thing out there. However, as much as I think 3D World is a cleaner looking game, I think Odyssey is a far more detailed one, and I think that goes a long way for the type of game Odyssey is because it's more fun to explore. You know, I'm just picturing like the Sand Kingdom, you know, when you first initially go into that small little village, you know, there's a million things you can look at with those buildings and like the signage and all of that stuff. Now, I think another thing that I like about 3D World is just how colorful it is. Odyssey is also colorful, but I do find that the color palette feels a lot more muted in comparison to 3D World. It feels a bit desaturated. But overall, even though I do prefer the soundtrack to 3D World, I think even though it has some downsides, I do think the presentation is better with Super Mario Odyssey. Higher highs and lower lows, but I do kind of think a lot of the stuff in Odyssey goes a long way. Because keep in mind, both of these games are nice to look at. They both look good. 3D World is cleaner, but I just don't really like its aesthetic as much. I can also bitch about the aesthetic with Odyssey, but I don't like the plastic nonsense, man. And the soundtrack, I mean, like, you know, okay, like when I say low lows, I don't mean anything in Odyssey sounds bad. It's more so like, I think it does have a lot more tracks that I'm just kind of like, you know, whatever about compared to 3D World, which, you know, overall, I think pretty much every song in 3D World is pretty damn good. But at its height, Odyssey just has so much going on. And a lot of the music, honestly, kind of invokes an emotional response. Like that Cascade Kingdom song, like it feels like, oh my God, we're going on an adventure. 3D World is just like, damn, this is just really damn good music. Oh, and another really interesting thing about Odyssey is the fact that pretty much every track in the game has an 8-bit rendition of it, because you have the sections of Odyssey where you can go through those 8-bit pipes, and then your 8-bit Mario, and then the music does change because of that. So there are like 8-bit versions of all these tracks, which is really cool. It's a huge attention to detail. Overall, I think presentation-wise, I'm giving it to Odyssey. All right, next up, we have gameplay. That includes the level design, content, replay value, the controls of the game. So firstly, I'm just gonna say Mario Odyssey has some of the best feeling controls of any 3D Mario, not only 3D Mario, but 3D platformer out there. Genuinely controls like butter. Like when you start playing Mario Odyssey, it just feels so damn good to just move around. I genuinely feel like I have a certain level of control of Mario in Odyssey, unlike any other Mario game before this. 3D World controls fine, but I do think there is this weird thing with 3D World where you're kind of locked into 8 directions moving around. So you don't really have 360 degrees of movement. So you can see if you go at an angle, Mario will just kind of snap into like northeast, you know? And it doesn't feel bad, but you definitely don't get that same level of precision that you get with Odyssey that just feels so good. I can kind of understand why they did that with 3D World. This game on the Wii U allows you to use like Wii remotes on their side where you're only using a D-pad. So, you know, you only have 8 directions with a D-pad. But in addition to that, just because of the more geometric level design in 3D World, and also just the fact that, you know, kind of the core of this game was designed for the stereoscopic 3D of the 3DS and whatnot, maybe they just wanted to lock you into 8 directions just to make it a lot easier to make certain jumps and to make sure that like, okay, like, yeah, you know you're going at this angle and you're gonna land here. But again, because the core of this game design originated on the 3DS, there are a fair amount of moments where the perspective is just kind of too hard to gauge, and there's a couple of moments in 3D World where like I just flat out missed the jump and I think I'm in one area when in reality I might be behind the area where I think I'm at. So I would definitely give the control to Mario Odyssey. However, I think replay value wise, I would honestly give it to Super Mario 3D World. You know, Mario Odyssey has like 1,000 moons or something to collect. However, they're kind of pointless too. It's kind of just there if you want to do it. And I do find that the structure of the moons in the game, you know, are definitely a lot different from like Power Stars in Mario 64, where they're more so linked to like missions or something to complete. Mario Odyssey kind of just scatters moons all around as basically this game's collectible, and you can get moons for doing super minimal things like, oh, I kicked a rock, I chased a rabbit around, I just grabbed it. You can grab like 5 moons within a minute if you know where to go in certain levels. But then they also act as your reward for completing like more mission-like things like you would do in like Mario 64, like completing a challenge or beating a boss fight or something like that. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, I'm fine with the structure of collecting moons in Mario Odyssey, but I will definitely say it does make replaying the game not as enjoyable. It feels like you kind of have to wait a good long while to jump right back into Mario Odyssey and replay it. You know, I've seen people criticize how Mario Odyssey handles its moons because they're going like, oh, well, they're not as memorable or fun to get as the Power Stars. And I'm kind of like, well, that's because they're a different thing. You know, one moon in Mario Odyssey isn't the same as one Power Star in Mario 64. They're both assigned to different things. They both have different values. And you're not meant to have a super memorable experience getting the moon by kicking a rock in a random level. It's just meant to be like an ongoing collectible. The way Mario Odyssey works is different, and I like it. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it flat out replaces how the other 3D Marios do their main collectibles. But I will definitely agree that it makes it kind of hard to really want to, let's say 100% the game or replay it within like maybe a year or so after playing it the first time. Especially considering like once you unlock the final hard level in Mario Odyssey, there's really no reason to like collect the moons. The moons just don't really feel like they have a lot of value other than just get a bunch of them, you know? They're just kind of this thing where a bunch of levels just have a shit ton of them. So just grab as many as you can find and like, oh, okay, you have enough moons to proceed. So just do that and then do the same thing. And then by the end of the game, yeah, you know, like if you want to get more mileage out of the game, then get more moons. But I think looking at a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza, which was developed by the same team as Mario Odyssey, I think the way that game has you collect the Bonandium gems, which is that game's kind of replacement for moons, is much better because you don't even need any of those things to complete the game. They're there basically as ways to upgrade your skill tree. So while they're not necessary to progress throughout the game, they oddly enough feel like they have more value than the power moons do in Mario Odyssey, which weirdly enough, you need the power moons to progress throughout the game, but it's also like, they just don't feel as worthwhile. Now, with that being said, Mario 3D World, I think, is a lot easier to just warrant a replay through, mainly because, like, the collectibles in this game are a lot more straightforward. Pretty much every level has 3 green stars to collect, a stamp to collect, get to the top of the flagpole. That's all you really have to do. It's very straightforward. It's very clean cut and simple. There's still a lot to do, and it can be really tricky to get everything. But I think this just being a lot more laser focused makes it easier to replay on top of the fact that you have multiplayer in this game. Now, keep in mind, Odyssey does also have multiplayer. Who the f cares though? One player plays as Mario, the other plays as Cappy. It's pointless. Now, it's definitely more worthwhile than Mario Galaxy's 2-player mode, which just has another player using a cursor to collect star bits and everything. But still, you know, like it's not the same. It's literally just kind of like a shoehorned in 2-player mode into a game that was never designed with 2 players in mind. 3D World was always designed with multiplayer in mind, and I think this is probably one of the best Mario platformers for multiplayer. 4 players in New Super Mario Bros. Wii or U, just it gets too crowded, and you end up bumping off of each other. You end up accidentally picking each other up, stealing power-ups. Whenever somebody dies, the entire screen freezes for a split second. 3D World, being in 3D, definitely does give each player a lot more room to breathe. So I think concerning the collectibles and also the multiplayer mode, I find 3D World to be a much more replayable experience. I've already replayed 3D World a hell of a lot more than Mario Odyssey, which is strange because Odyssey does feel like a much bigger package, but it just kind of feels like there's almost too much to do to really be like super excited to replay it. Also, considering the fact that Odyssey makes an amazing first impression with a lot of its stuff, you know, just seeing something like the Ruined Kingdom for the first time, or getting to the final boss where you play as Bowser, and then unlocking the Mushroom Kingdom. Like, there's so much stuff that just gave me some big dumbass smile on my face the first time I saw it. But with that being said, after that big first impression, you know, that stuff doesn't leave as much of an impact, you know? It's still cool, and it's really cute, and I really appreciate the amount of fan service they put in this game and the attention to detail with everything. However, I think 3D World is a much longer lasting kind of like fun experience. I feel like a bit of Odyssey's impact kind of depends on like the first time that you play and like how cool everything is. And then after that, it's still great, but I think 3D World, while it doesn't really reach those highs, like it's a lot more of just a mellow experience overall. It has some really cool moments, like the final boss with Bowser is incredible and still really cool, but it doesn't really have that same amount of like crazy fan service as Odyssey does. But I honestly think that makes it just a better experience these days to just kind of replay through and enjoy time and time again. But that brings me to the level designs. Now, of course, Odyssey doesn't really have as clear cut like, oh, this is level 1, level 2, level 3, as much as like 3D World does. But let's just talk about the overall design of these games, because 3D World is often kind of like a masterclass in showcasing Nintendo's little design philosophy. I've seen numerous videos on YouTube just kind of outlining how great the level design in 3D World is, where they teach you how certain game mechanics work without explicitly telling you, and they ramp stuff up slowly but surely throughout the level. A lot of the levels in 3D World may not be these giant bombastic things, but you can really appreciate how smartly designed everything is. Now, Odyssey follows a lot of similar design tactics, and I think it's honestly even more commendable considering how much more open the game is. How you can kind of conquer pretty much anything in this game in any direction you choose. You can go wherever you want. You can just collect all these different moons. You can do whatever you want, and they have a lot of stages in this game that kind of harken back to a lot of 3D World stages, a lot of the more challenge stages in Mario Odyssey. So it's really tricky for me because I consider these both to be pretty equal in terms of being kind of these master classes in 3D platforming design, but in different ways because they're two different types of 3D platformers. So it kind of comes down to content, and I do feel like Mario Odyssey has substantially more like general content and things to play around with. I mean, it's definitely going to take you longer to get through this game. I mean, both games are pretty easy to just kind of blast through if you want to get from the start to the you know, the general final boss, you know, kind of just see the credits roll. But I would say if somebody was asking me, hey, what game should I buy? You know, let's say this was like Mario 3D World on the Wii U, you know, not 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, because that's kind of an unfair thing considering you get Bowser's Fury with 3D World. So let's just imagine if 3D World on the Wii U was the game I'm recommending here. But if I had to convince somebody to buy like either of these games by themselves, I'd have a much easier time convincing somebody to pick up Mario Odyssey. I do feel like you have more content here, even though I do feel like this is much more straightforward, good, clean fun. This is kind of the easier recommendation to make, but which one of these games has better gameplay overall? Oh God, you know what? I think it might be Mario Odyssey, just because like I said, like control-wise, I think Mario Odyssey feels a lot better. Replay value, I do think Mario 3D World is better in this regard, but I do think Mario Odyssey has a substantial amount of more content to it, and level design-wise, I do feel like both of these games are kind of like in the same league. But I do find with the bigger levels of Mario Odyssey that a lot of the level design, it's obvious that something like this took a lot of work, and it has a lot of detail pumped into it. So, I mean, that leaves us with the legacy of things. Mario Odyssey may have won the last two things, but let's talk about the legacy. 3D World, honestly, weirdly enough, might win this out just because let's consider the fact that 3D World is almost seen as like the baseline, like what Mario is. Like this is like de facto Mario. Mario Odyssey, strangely enough, I was expecting to see a lot more elements from Mario Odyssey kind of extend over to other Mario games. And, you know, we've seen a lot of new Donk City in stuff like Mario Golf Super Rush, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker on Switch, and then we also have it in Donkey Kong Bonanza, as Donkey Kong Bonanza kind of ties into Mario Odyssey. But that also includes Pauline, which kind of continues her role from Mario Odyssey, which is also like one of the big things that we see from this game kind of continue on. Pauline has kind of become like another de facto Mario character, which is strange considering Pauline has kind of been there since the very start in the original arcade Donkey Kong, but still, you know, it's really cool to see her prominence in the series just kind of grow since Mario Odyssey. I was always expecting to see a lot more Cappy than what we saw. And then the Mario movie, they actually included a bunch of stuff from Odyssey, primarily the wedding aspect of Odyssey. But the Mario movie also included Cat Mario. That's something. And you know about the Cat Mario show, some show Nintendo produced for like hundreds of damn episodes. Like, it's just some web show. I don't even think I've really seen much of it. I just know that this thing has been going on for like decades. So you also had Super Bell Subway, which is the power-up in Mario 3D World. That appeared in Mario Kart 8. And then you also had the Piranha Plant item, which debuted in Mario 3D World. That was in Mario Kart 8. In Mario Party 10, there's like a tournament mode for the mini games, and they use the clear pipes from Mario 3D World. And then the Sprixie is in Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. You know, I might have said things a little too soon. I think Mario Odyssey honestly takes the cake for legacy. You know, it is something I just realized, but like Mario Odyssey had kind of like a prequel in the sense of Donkey Kong Bonanza, where you see like elements of Mario Odyssey in that game. But then you have kind of a prequel with Mario 3D World in the form of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, which the end of that game shows that that game was a prequel to 3D World. But then you have the Switch version of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, which is actually a prequel to Mario Odyssey, which now also has a prequel in the form of Donkey Kong Bonanza. But 3D World was a game style in Mario Maker 2. God, I don't know. I mean, overall, so I'm gonna be honest. Like, Odyssey may have had like a full sweep here. But honestly, like, I could have gone either way on a lot of this stuff. Like, I was really kind of struggling, but I kind of think overall, like, okay, what do I think is the more impressive game? And I'd honestly say, yeah, I would probably give it to Mario Odyssey, but I do think 3D World is the more consistent experience. And I think, like, overall, like, you know, like, it kind of depends on what day I'm talking about this, because in many ways, I think 3D World does have superior gameplay. In many ways, I think it does have superior presentation. Kind of depends on how I'm feeling. But as it is, I think these are both incredible games. However, if we're comparing these two packages, this is my favorite. I think this is one of the best Mario games ever created. I think this is one of the best packages you could possibly get. Is 3D World, a better version of 3D World, and then a really damn cool open world Mario adventure. Oh man, it's so perfect. But that wasn't what I was comparing today. I was comparing this great game to this great game on a pile of shit. So, oh wow, I wonder which one will win.